All right, lads, welcome back to another episode of Who's Got the Ball. Me and Shane here once again. Shane, what was the crack?
Not a whole lot. Still nursing this bug or whatever it is I picked up in Prague. I finally got my prescription sorted. It's the same one we both had the last time we were sick, the one that tastes like vanilla. So at least it doesn't taste too bad, but the size of the tablets are massive. Over the weekends, just watched Limerick beat Cork and then Cove go and hammer Treaty as revenge. So ended up watching the second half from the Cove clubhouse because I had no interest in standing in the cold after when they were 3-0 down at the time. So yeah, on to Cork now tomorrow night. Doesn't get any easier. What about yourself? Big weekend?
Yeah, bit of hardship for you, all right.
Hmm.
Going to those games and the way Treaty are playing at the moment. But yeah, last weekend just really watched a bit of sport. Was at home with the family for Easter, so it was nice. I also did watch that Limerick game. They're absolutely brilliant.
Hmm.
And yeah, big game now for Carlow this weekend. First game of the Leinster Championship, so I'll be going home for that on Sunday in Dr. Cullen. Should be a great atmosphere. Already beat Wicklow in the league, so if we can do that again, we book a game against Dublin. So that would be massive, just for the day of it. So hopefully we can get that one done. Apart from that, probably look at a bit of Leinster, considering they're into the quarterfinals of the of
Hmm.
their Champions Cup. I was considering tickets, but just too much things to do this weekend, and already going to a couple of games of different sports. An American football game as well between UCD and the Trojans in UCD. I'll catch a bit of that as well. So yeah, a lot of sport. I can't throw in another game on top of there, or
Yeah, fair enough.
Ashing might kill me. So
Yeah, she'll actually never talk to you again.
but yeah, let's move on to what we chatted about this week to give you the rundown. So we went through the Giants and the Jets, what they need, and what we'd like them to get for the NFL draft, because I'm a Giants fan, Shane's a Jets fan, so we decided to focus on our own teams this week and say what we wanted and the teams needed going forward. From there, we welcomed Michael in. He had a little bit of a new three-part segment that ran quickly. He might be bringing that forward. It was interesting, so let us know what you think. And then after that, we talked about Giannis, the whole situation surrounding him before we get into the playoffs next week, for the NBA. So it's really getting into the best part of the season over there. Then we gave our Gan Seans picks after my first 5 pointer last week. Absolutely flying there, so I am. Then over to the football Champions League quarter-final breakdown of the first leg and which teams we thought could make a comeback in the second leg that still have a chance. I think they're all still up in the air, but we had some opinions there on that. And then a preview of Chelsea versus Man City on the weekend, which is coming up on Super Sunday, and what we think the score is going to be. Wrapped up with the power rankings as usual. Packed episode, so let's jump straight into it. Okay, so we're going to start with the NFL this week. We've got draft season coming up. Last week we did a redraft of last season's draft, the top 10. So before we get into any prospects, or looking at the actual draft itself, which isn't for another few weeks, we want to look at specifically who we want for our teams, because I'm a New York Giants fan. If you don't already know, Shane is a New York Jets fan, and like we mentioned it, but like we rarely talk about them in too much detail because they're really haven't been interesting in the whole last year that we've been doing this. So I think we'd like to give a chat about who we think should go there, and I think both teams have pretty big fan bases, so I'm sure this will be of interest
Hmm.
to more than just the two of us. But I'll let you go first, because the Jets picked number two, so that's before the Giants. So, who would you ideally like to see them pick at number two? And if you want to go further, other things they need to fill during the draft, I'd love to hear it.
So I think the main thing that the Jets need to sort out this year is the fact that they couldn't get an interception and they were third last in terms of sacks last year. I think wide receiver is important as well, but I think getting the edge position sorted is probably the most important thing they can do. And I've always said I'm no expert in college football, but I was looking up during the week to see, and I think David Bailey is one that's going to be very very high on their list of people to pick up. So he's a defensive end. He ran a 4.5 second 40, which is absolutely huge considering how quickly he can clearly get off the line. And if not him, then maybe the linebacker, Arvil Reese. I think one of the two of them is likely going to go as the second pick and just kind of slot straight into that Jets defense. Maybe have a slow start the same way Abdul Carter did last year for the Giants and just work their way in. And once they're in, then I think they'll be unstoppable. But the Jets never seem to do anything right. So it really wouldn't surprise me if they went out and just went straight for a wide receiver, picked up Mikhail Lemon or something like that, or Chris Bell, and just forget about their defense again. And Aaron Glenn's sitting there scratching his head, wondering what's going on, and everything just kind of goes to poo again. But I do think if they have any sense, they'll be looking at David Bailey as their second pick. Obviously, if they had the first pick, they'd be going Mendoza, which I think every team in the NFL will probably do at this stage, bar maybe the Bills. But I just think with the fact with the second pick, he's gone off the board, it will be hopefully an edge or a linebacker to pick up in the first round.
Yeah, hopefully they don't do anything stupid and go for Jeremiah Love, because he's like such a good player, but like you can't be picking a running back at 2 like the Giants
Yeah,
did with Saquon. Just like, yeah, okay, he was great for the Giants, but did it work out in the long term? No, we made
no,
one playoffs with him, like, so it's not exactly helpful. Like, if the Jets are gonna do anything here, it has to be something that's, I think, on the defensive line or the offensive line. And you've highlighted 2 great options on the defensive line. I think Arvel Reese is probably the most likely off the edge, just because he's a little bit higher draft stock, but I think you
mm,
can't go wrong with either of those guys. And if they go offensive tackle, like, I think if they go with Maui Noah, that would be a great pick, and it wouldn't be someone that people want really, because they wouldn't be like, oh, thank God, like we got another offensive tackle, but he can play along the line, and that would be smart. So
yeah,
I think later then in the draft, obviously, I think you probably need to be looking at wide receiver, cornerback.
100%. Hmm. Yeah, I think wide receiver above cornerback. I think there's always value in the drafts if when it comes to cornerbacks further down, ones that are kind of they didn't have the most amazing college careers, but they have the speed, they have the hands that you can pick them up in the third round and they just slot in. And like there's not much competition on this Jets defense that they're going to be coming in, and they're not going up against the Sauce Gardner anymore and things like that. So anyone who's even semi-competent coming in can catch a ball, get us an interception, is going to look like a star in this Jets team. The Jets are just they have more holes than they have positions filled, really. Like no matter what they pick, it's going to they're going to be someone that's going to slot straight in their rookie year and hopefully have a big season, because this Jets roster, I was so high in it coming into last season, as I'm sure you'll if you watched our recap of our predictions. Like I was so just really excited about what we were coming in, and there was nothing to be excited about for the whole season. First team to go a whole season without an interception is absolutely insane, considering Aaron Glenn was a defensive coach. Yeah, the whole thing was just mad last year. They need to rip it up, not fully, but kind of get a semi restart. Like last year was a false start, maybe. This is the year they kind of just get things going. And if they do anything stupid in the first round, I'm actually just going to lose my mind over them, because like, when you look at what Cleveland did last year, like it wouldn't surprise me if the Jets went and did that and picked 4 quarterbacks in 4 rounds and just said, "Oh, we actually forgot about everything else." So hopefully not, but we'll wait and see.
Yeah, honestly, if the Jets actually followed the Cleveland's first round plan, but nothing after that, it would actually be good, because when they got the trade back with the Jags from the second spot, that was actually a very good trade. So if the Jets
Mm,
could swing something like that, where someone is desperate for Arvel Reese, or someone gets really antsy and they want Jeremiah Love and they don't want to wait, and they move up, like if the Jets could move back like 6 or 7 spots and get a first from next year, like that would be, they'd have perfect. They'd be perfectly lined up for next year. Then to either push to the
yeah,
top and get the QB they want, or just keep stacking on the roster. So yeah, I think we'll look at the Giants side of things. I think it's a slightly different look, because Giants are kind of stacked along the defensive line, so there's no reason for them to worry about the likes of Reese or Bailey. I think for me, there's a few things they could do here. If they went with Jeremiah Love, I think it would be a waste, because I wouldn't like them to pick a running back that high. I know we probably need an extra guy. We have Scadabo and Tracy, but I'm not sure what way Tracy's going to be used. He might be used as more of a pass catching back. And Scadabo's coming off an injury. I think we'd be better served to get somebody later if we're going for a running back, and just, open for another Scadabo in the 4th or 5th round.
mm,
I just think Love can't be done, but it would be a huge selling point in New York to say we've got this, probably the most talented guy in the draft, and he's going to be your running back. But I think what really needs to be done is look at that middle of the defense or cornerback. So I think Caleb Downs would be a reach at five. I don't think they should stretch that far for him at
Mm.
safety. Cornerback is an issue, but I think they could go for Mansour Delane out of LSU. He looks unbelievable if you look at his tape. But overall, I'd love to see the Giants use the fifth pick to grab Sonny Styles. I think a lot of people are mocking him to the Giants. Hard hitting linebacker, somebody who wants to just play smash mouth football. He's able to read the game so well. I think the Giants for a long time haven't had that like linebacker that can you can trust him in the middle of the field. Like there's times there where guys were coming off the practice squad and they were wearing the green dot on the field because the Giants didn't really have a proper linebacker to call plays. Micah McFadden was injured last season. If he comes back and we get Sonny Styles, I think that could be a dangerous duo at linebacker. I think Styles would hit the ground running, and that would really give us something that we have been lacking for a long time, a leader on the defense, even though he would be a rookie. I've mentioned Maui Noah for the Jets. I think if the Giants grab him either, that's a very smart pick. It's a very John Harbaugh pick. It's not a sexy pick that fans would be going crazy about, but it'd be smart. I wouldn't be annoyed at that either. But Sonny Styles is the guy that I want at number five.
Yeah, I think we're both in a position now where I'm not looking for the sexy picks. I wanted it last year. I want them to pick up a tight end, just go completely balls to the wall and just get a tight end that can catch balls. I've said it over and over again. This year, I just want them to actually fill the holes. They don't really have a hole. Let's say grow.
Man, that sentence is just getting worse and worse. You're on about sexy picks and then tight ends catching balls, and then you're like, come on.
I honestly, that wasn't intentional. I'm just going to
I
go back and
know.
talk about
It
Sonny Styles again for a second
NFL
because,
NFL NFL commentators, if you like
yeah,
clip up some of the stuff, it's so funny the things that they say.
yeah. I think Sonny Styles, 6'5", 244 pounds, would be a really, really good pickup for the Giants. I do completely see where you're going for him with the fifth pick as well because your offense isn't in a massive, like it's not in a bad position really when you look at it on paper. Obviously, you would like a running back, but your wide receivers are grand. You have Jackson Dart. He's a really, really good quarterback. You have Scatterbo coming back. Hopefully, for your side of things, the same kind of player he was just before he got that injury. Tyrone Tracy had a really, really good rookie season. If he can get anywhere near to what he was that again as a backup running back, then he's like you have two really good options there. So I think sorting out the defense the same as the Jets is something that should be really, really high on the list. And with a coach like Harbaugh as well, you can't really go wrong. If you pick up someone like Sonny Styles and he gets 3 months at Harbaugh or 4 months before the season starts, he could be twice the player he was before when he came out of college, before he even plays his first snap in the NFL.
Yeah, I agree. I think as well with the Giants, like if they look further down the line, like you mentioned wide receiver, like a few months ago, Conan asked me who I wanted at the fifth pick. We were texting and I was like, oh, Carnell Tate. Because I was like, we need another wide receiver. But then I think signing Darnell Mooney is a very smart move because he's a solid like second to third receiver. Slayton is around the third receiver level. Obviously, we have neighbors, and we've got some other pieces there that can do a job, and likely is going to be a big target. So I think wide receiver can be later in the draft. We probably do need at least one. I like Jeff Caldwell, out of Cincinnati. He's a monster. I was just looking for big guys, to be honest, down in each position and seeing who's like the biggest and that still has speed. He was one of the fastest and he's 6'5". I think he may not be one of the best options, but the NFL has gone so physical now. I think he could learn to catch passes better than he did at the college level, but he has the size for the NFL. And that's also why I look at somebody who I think the Jets could look at too, maybe around the third round, fourth round, Takario Davis, cornerback out of Washington. He's 6'4", 6'5", pretty fast, and I think in the NFL it's needed against these big receivers nowadays and a lot of tight ends who can catch the ball. Like we mentioned last week, how many there is right now.
Yeah, I was
As
just going
Shane
to bring
tries,
that up.
tries
I was
not to
actually just
smile
going to bring up
again.
that point as well. I know every time I hear that position now for the rest of my life, I'm going to be done. But I think it's like just like you said, I was going to bring it up as well that we were talking so much last week about the tight ends and how good they are now catching the ball, that they are like just oversized wide receivers. So you do need people who are going to be big and be able to just even challenge them for the ball, that they're not getting free catches every single time and free runs at slower players. So you do definitely need to start bringing size in. And if you can get a wide receiver who's 6'4", 6'5", fast, as well as Isaiah Likely as well, and then you have the nimble little neighbours as well on top. He's not little, but he's little compared to the rest of them. Then I think you've a really, really good basis then to start. And then you've Scatterbo, who's about 4'11" when he's standing beside the rest of them, who can just run between people's legs at some point with the way things are going. So yeah, I think looking at the big physical wide receivers, tight ends, cornerbacks, I think that's the way forward in this draft.
Yeah, and building in the trenches is important too.
Mm.
Like we both mentioned the importance of the line, and I think one final point I'll make is that I know some teams draft like guards for guard position along the line, but I think drafting tackles, guys who played tackle in college, and letting them start at guard if they have the ability to do so is it's an easier position in the NFL, and it's something you can work up to then playing tackle in the future. So I think that if you look at guys who played offensive tackle at a decent level and then let them play guard, which is where the Giants have an issue because they have Thomas and Illuminor at tackle, whereas guard is kind of light. If you can go for someone, I don't know, like I don't know how good Blake Miller is. He looks solid out of Clemson, some of the stuff I've seen, but there's also questions about him. But one thing I did read is that he's a guy who would play like with a broken wrist, play through anything. He played the most snaps I think of any player on the offensive line ever for Clemson, and he missed like one practice in his 4 years. Even he had a broken wrist during the season. So not him per se, but he's a big 6'6" guard tackle that can play guard and actually will play through injuries. So I think people like him later on they can play guard, you can take a punt on them. And if you had 4 or 5 guys there in the room with guys that are already there, then you can't go wrong there. I think eventually you're going to get at least one or two additions to your line, and then you have your two bookends already with Illuminar and Thomas. So I think if the Giants get a couple of offensive linemen, they go with Styles, and then the rest of the draft is to fill the needs at cornerback, wide receiver, safety, running back, whatever you can get up. Maybe one, two, three of those positions. Then I think you can't be too annoyed at it, but they need to get that first pick right. But I think with Harbaugh, I don't have any worries that they'll get it wrong.
Yeah, and I think once you get to the later stages of the draft, it is about just taking the best player available. A bit like what you do if you're playing Madden, where you get to like the sixth round, you're like, okay, who's the best player here, and you just grab him. And I think if it comes down and there's only three corners left in the seventh round, and you still really need one, you just say, okay, you're the best of the rest. We're going to take you. We're going to give you to Harbaugh, and we're going to see what he can do with you over the offseason and see if he can make you a competitive player. And I don't have that same confidence in the Jets that you can say, okay, we're going to take the best of the rest in the seventh round, give him to Aaron Glenn and see what he can do. It's just like, I lost all my hope in Aaron Glenn when a defensive coach couldn't get an interception last year. So my confidence is literally the lowest it's ever been as a Jets fan going into this season. So watch him go and win 14 games.
Yeah, still I think I have to mention that they're going to get that many wins.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think having hope low is better, to be honest. And
Yeah.
that's why I'm trying not to get too hopeful about Harbaugh, but I do think he'll elevate the team. So yeah, that's our NFL section. So let's welcome Michael in. So we've got our man Michael back again for the NBA segment. It's been a couple of weeks, but don't worry. If you want more Michael, he'll be here every week during the NBA playoffs. So for the next couple of months, he'll be hitting your ears in every episode. So Michael, bi-weekly turns to weekly segment. How are you?
I'm fine, thanks. I'm excited for NBA playoffs to start and for my reign to continue on this podcast. I can't wait to bother you about every minute detail of NBA basketball. But I wanted to start off a little bit. We're going to be talking about Giannis later, but I wanted to start off a little bit broad. I'm going to go with a quick NBA roundup. So I'm going to hit you with my favorite stat, story, and quote over the last week, and we'll get your opinion on it very quickly. So, firstly, my stat in a very sad loss to the Mavs. LeBron drops 30 points and 15 assists. Only two other players have hit that this whole season. Jokic twice and SGA. Give me your opinions on that, boys. Let me tell you. The Kings' dominance continues.
Is this
Well,
you
he's on
trying to say that
IR right now,
LeBron is
so
going to play for another 20 years because he's done the same thing as Jokic and SGA? You can't, he's not in that conversation anymore, I don't think. I do think he's still brilliant, quite clearly, but I think he's past the point where you can put him into the bracket with the new young faces of the league. I think while he's there, he'll always be a face of the league, but he's not the face of the league anymore. That's my opinion personally.
I think the one thing I'll say about LeBron is if at 40 years old your deterioration is into like prime Aaron Gordon, then I think you're doing pretty good. So I think
Yes.
he's been good enough for his age, more than good enough. And that stat line kind of just shows it, that he's still got it. But yeah, the Lakers are just a joke right now with the injuries. Yeah,
Yeah.
good luck to them
Thank
in the
God.
playoffs.
Speaking about the Lakers and the Mavs, actually, it comes to my favorite story, which is Austin Reeves was scanned on his oblique after getting injured in the OKC game. And the Mavericks medical staff, it was found out, scanned the wrong side of Austin Reeves. And the Lakers had to take him in for another scan before ruling him out. No worries, the Mavericks have come out with a statement saying that the medical staff followed correct procedures. So they've investigated and they found that they've done nothing wrong. Just a shocking circumstance completely. I just thought it was a joke.
Yeah, I don't understand how when I saw that story, it looked like a Sentinel like report,
Mm.
just to be like to get more like down on the Mavs, to be like, look how stupid they are and everything that they've done. But no, that's what they did. And if they found no issues with their internal process, who's going to tell them different? It's their own medical staff and it's their own procedure. So obviously they did it wrong. They're going to say, no, we didn't do it wrong. We did, maybe they're going to say we did what he told us, whatever. But the guy he could barely walk. You could see after that injury. So like you said, a lot of injuries for the Lakers, and the Mavs just do what the Mavs do, and you just have to leave them to it. To be honest, at this point.
Yeah, it's one of those things where if this was their own player, there's absolutely no hope they'd made that mistake. They were given that 10% effort and concentration. That's why it happened. They couldn't have cared less if Austin Reeves has a broken leg on his left leg and they're like, oh no, his right leg is absolutely fine. Off you go there and not do anything with it. If anything, they were probably trying to make the Lakers play him again for another game or two before realizing and then make him miss the rest of the season. Maybe they're not that malicious. Maybe they are just stupid. But I do think it's down to about 10% concentration and effort level that went into that. But if it was one of their own players, that was Cooper Flag. Did it on both sides. Did it tested his heart and his head and his arms to make sure they're still at the same level. They'd have gone all to town. But the fact it was Austin Reeves, like, oh, just get him in and get him out. They couldn't have cared less.
Just shocking from a billion-dollar company. And Anthony Davis is definitely saying, whew, right here. Like, this is just shocking from a team who just had AD on, who was injured all year. And my last favorite quote of the week now, Brad Stevens, fantastic answer to a reporter when asked about character traits that the Celtics look for when acquiring role players, both in the draft and free agency. So the exact quote is competitive character where team matters, you're growth oriented, you come to work every day, and your ambition doesn't necessarily exceed your self awareness.
Yeah, I
And
think that's Derek White summed up that whole tweet, that whole quote. He couldn't, and the guys on the bench, if they can get loads of mini Derek Whites out of the likes of a Jordan Walsh or Baylor Shireman, so on, then you're hitting the jackpot, even if they're not up to that level. But that's just Derek White summed up, and obviously that's what a lot of their players do, and that's why they are so good.
Yeah, that's one of those things. I'm going to bring it to football for a second. When Jurgen Klopp came into Liverpool, he had a bit of a no dickhead rule. So he'd interview all the players before he signed them. And if they had any sort of flaws in their character or anything like that, he'd be like, no, I don't want them. Go find someone who's going to actually play for the team. Be selfless. So it's the same kind of thing where if you surround yourself with good people, you are going to be more successful than bringing in a load of individuals who are just out there for themselves and so like the Ronaldo thing, where it's like I know we won 4-0, but I didn't score, so I'm not happy. Like that's not the kind of player you want on your team. I know for him it's different because rarely ever went a game without scoring a goal at one point in his career. So he was kind of maybe led away with it more than anyone else would. But it is about just having no dickheads around you. And like we can see this year what the Celtics have done in particular, considering they were without Tatum for so long, to be second in the Eastern Conference with 54 wins, missing their best player. Look what happened to Pacers when they lost their best player after being in the finals last year. It's night and day from what everyone else is doing. So if you just surround yourself with good people, it's. I actually think it's the only route forward. I think that's absolutely brilliant.
Yeah, and I'd like to say the last part, your ambition doesn't exceed your self awareness. Cam Thomas, that is why you are not in the league. That right there. All right, so moving on to our main topic for today now. This season has been quite a bumpy ride for Giannis, from the trade request to how messy the trade deadline was and Calci and all of that, to now all the recent news with the injury and his relationship with the Bucks kind of coming out of the roadwork. Everything just feels like a cherry on top of the Bucks' 30-win season. Let's start from the beginning. What's your opinion on this whole nasty breakup, and what do you think was the core reason? Do you think it was the core reason that the Bucks failed this season?
So I don't think it's the core reason they failed. I think they actually have a pretty poor team at the moment. I think what led to this whole like the relationship getting to the point where they are absolutely going to have to split in the summer was when he was coming out saying, "I'm healthy, I want to play," in the Bucks like he's not healthy, he won't do the 3-on-3 practices. It was just like they're clearly trying to tank to get a draft pick. He clearly wants to play because it's just the kind of person he is. I think once that happened, he was like, "This is no longer the organization for me. I want to be at a team who is challenging for championships, trying to win every single week or every single game." I know they play about 4 games a week, so not once a week he's going to have to win. He's trying to win every single match, every single time. He's just surrounded by losers. And I think this kind of just this kind of just cemented in his head that, yeah, it's not just losers on the court for me, it's losers in the front office, it's losers in the back office, it's the coach is a loser. Everything about him is just losers. He's like, what am I now? He's 32. What am I now? He's whatever I just said, but he's 32 now. He doesn't have long left to get another championship, and I'm sure he'd love at least one more, if not two more, before he does hang up his basketball or his shirt or whatever it is and move on. So I think it is down to them shutting him down and him coming out saying, "No, put me on that court and I'll show you who's shut down."
Yeah, I think the wry smile both me and Michael gave at the sight of Doc Rivers there was great. He said the coach was a loser. That was great. But I think that in the issue in itself and the question of you asking is everything kind of gone wrong because of him? I think the way you've answered it, Shane, is right, but also all of that is because of him because everything they've done is to appease him. So
Yeah.
they've tried so hard to build everything to make him happy. Like they wouldn't be in this situation if they didn't go after Lillard. And they went after Lillard to try and make Giannis happy. And then nobody could have saw that ending the way it did with the injuries and then Lillard being unhappy and then they stretch and waive him so that they can sign Miles Turner, who is a fine player, but he's not somebody that's going to turn a team around alongside Giannis. Like you need a lot more than that. And the fact that they went out and lost so many games this season in such an embarrassing manner, the Shams piece that kind of came to light this week that brought a lot of issues up, specifically some of the things you're probably going to mention, Michael, is fairly damning about the way that Doc Rivers had spoke to the players about telling them to check his resume online instead of actually trying to win them over. Seems like a common occurrence for him. And then you've got Bobby Portis like going crazy at the players because they just weren't showing any effort whatsoever. And there's really mad quotes in there. Like there's one that I noted is from a team source saying that the crux of the issue is feeling Giannis doesn't want to be here on any given day. So it all does really come back to him, this whole bad smell around the franchise and the bad attitude. And like he can pretend to be as nice as he wants and say that he wanted things to go well and he wanted to work out with the Bucks and he wanted to re-sign. None of that is true. He had a gentleman's agreement since his contract like 6 years ago that if a big move came in for him, they would let him go if he wanted to go. And he wants to just be made out to look like the good guy, and they're willing to do that for him. And to be honest, at this point, the front office is going to look bad for them, but they should just throw him under the bus because he's not doing everything the way he should in the background.
Just before you come in there, Michael, I just want to
Yeah,
just throw one more point out that another thing that has always annoyed me about him, and it's not just this season alone, it's that wherever he goes, his brothers have to be with him. So you're wasting roster space on two other lads who aren't good enough for the G League, but they're on NBA rosters because they're his brother. Where they mightn't have had to wave like Damian Lillard to sign Miles Turner if they didn't have the two other. Now maybe they would have because obviously Damian Lillard has been paid a lot more than those two are. But if they didn't have them there taking up space, maybe they'd have been able to bring in Miles Turner on top of Lillard. But I doubt it. But that's just annoyed me all throughout his career, and it's one of the reasons I've never wanted him to sign for the Rockets is because I don't want the other two coming along and taking up the space of not anymore now, but like Cam Whitmore at the time, who I thought was going to be an absolute star. It was like if one of these Giannis brothers come in, they're going to want to place on the bench every week, and that might be pushing down a Terry Eason or a Cam Whitmore as well. But it's just that's a nonsense thing he does everywhere he goes to.
yeah, I feel really in between with all of this because on one hand, it's a nasty breakup, but I think there's enough fault on both sides. James has a really good point with Giannis is the reason they brought in Dame and is also the reason they made so many moves in the last year to try and be competitive. But it really just feels like Giannis definitely could have handled this better. And I think it comes into my next question, which is how would you like to have seen Giannis handle this? He's treating it like a European professional team, which the NBA is not. Like the way from his quotes of how he's talking, he talks to his agent, and whatever happens, happens. Uh, I think it's clear that he's spoken to his agent. He's given his destinations of what he wants, and what he wants to think is everything else is no longer up to me. It's between my agent and the organization. I'm just going to keep playing basketball. And that's, you could see that in his attitude for the first half of the season. But as time has went on and he's not getting what he wants and his public perception is going down, he seems to be getting really desperate to do kind of anything to say, hey, I'm actually not a bad guy. And it just makes him look so much worse than if he just said nothing and didn't comment on any of it. But did it have an impact on their season? Yes. Their main impact on the season? Doc Rivers. We don't need to talk about it. Adrian Griffin was doing fine at this basketball club before Doc Rivers got in. Doc Rivers, historically, a horrific coach. In the last 6 years, even worse so. I mean, we'll just go to the one story, and I know the story that you guys are thinking of. Doc Rivers early on in the season telling his players after a loss, look at my resume, look at what I've done, look at what I'm doing. Reported 6 players reached out to journalists. 6 players on that team of the 15 there reached out to journalists to say this is some bullshit. Like, the Giannis situation did not help, but I think any competent coach could take Giannis and get to the play-in. Like, the fact that they are so low in the standings and the team isn't horrible. Like, it's not that there's absolutely devoid of talent, but I don't know. That pushes me on to my next question for you, which is like, how would you like to have seen Giannis handle it completely behind the scenes or James Harden fat suit? Like, what do you think your opinion is on that?
I think he should have basically made his intentions clear. And like you said, I think I mentioned it at the start of the season, but you've alluded to it there that we've rarely seen a European superstar. We've never seen a European superstar in the NBA push for a move the way the US players do, because it just doesn't work the same way. And I think if he just did that, that's what the media would have been used to. That's what everyone would have been used to. And although it's probably not common for him to behave that way. That's the way he's starting to behave now, and it looks bad because he started out in such a different way, like you've noted. So he should have picked a lane and he should have been honest. He tried the whole time to come out and go like, "Oh, I don't want to go anywhere," and then the next week it'd be like a report from Shams saying that Giannis could move. Like that's not coming from nobody. That's coming from his agent. So it's just like he wanted to talk out of two sides of his mouth constantly. If he was just straight up about it, whether that's good or bad, that would have been a lot better. And I know you've mentioned Doc Rivers a couple of times here, and I do agree that he's just as much to blame for the bad season, if not a lot more so. But that quote about him is like, that guy who does the skits, RDC World, I think, and he does like the Doc Rivers skit like after they lose in the playoffs. And he did like I think he did one when he was with the Sixers, and it's literally like exactly like that, where he's just like, "I'm not to blame. Everyone else is to blame. Check what I've done." And that was a joke, and this is what he actually does in real life. So it just goes to show you. But any other thoughts, Shane?
Yeah, so I think the way he could handle it better is like not coming out in public so often, saying all this healthy things, kind of keep it on the back burner. Clearly, the organization are trying to get a draft pick to help you next year. So why are you coming out and throwing him under the bus over and over again? And I think by him trying not to be the bad guy, he really has become the bad guy. And like the way James said is perfect. He's talking out of both sides of his mouth over and over again. And like no one has won in this battle. It's going to be a really messy breakup at the end of the season. I can't imagine he's there next season at all. There's no way he's sitting around and hanging on any longer. And it's hurt the Bucks in terms of like his value has absolutely plummeted. I would imagine like they'll still get a nice haul from it. It won't be what they would have gotten if they traded him at the start of the season. Start of the season just finishing as opposed to the start of next season. And like he's always trying to not be the villain, and here he is now being the NBA's biggest villain. So there's a tweet from a fella called Duncan Alexander, and it's that someone is always the crisis club. The aim for everyone is to not be the crisis club, and the Bucks have just because of him have just they've almost become just the effervescent crisis club. Every single week, there's another story coming out. It's not about Doc Rivers. I don't want to mention his name again. It's about Giannis, or it's about the team, and he's getting so much information from so many people that there has to be at least still six players who are talking to him, because there's no way he's getting all the information he's getting from one person. No one is that brave to keep coming out and giving them the stories over and over again, because that's a surefire way to be caught and dumped. So that there's at least four or five players still feeding him information every single week. He's just dripping it out. I reckon he's another 20 stories in the locker waiting for the off season when things are going quiet. There's no trades. He's like, Joe, what I'll do, I'll drop one of the Giannis stories again now, and that will get me my million views on Twitter again and keep the money up, blah, blah, blah. Giannis has completely and utterly ruined it for both sides. His legacy in Milwaukee is going to be when he goes back with any other team, he's going to be booed off the court. I think that's a guarantee. And the Americans don't really do that. There's going to be white flags and booing and everything, and it's just going to be a really, really toxic place to be when he goes back there for his first game. I'd actually love to be there. Whoever he goes back with, I'd love to be there and see the reaction to him.
Before you move on to the last question, Michael, I just want to say I think it's probably the first time Duncan Alexander has ever been brought into a Milwaukee Bucks conversation. So
Probably the last time as well.
No, I actually thought that was a fair point. And even your point about there's always a crisis club. I think at the start of the season, the crisis club was the Clippers, because
Yeah.
every week we were getting Clipper story after Clipper story. But I mean, they look fantastic now, and it really transitioned to the Bucks very quickly after that trade request. So I think you're spot on, Shane. We get into our final topic, a question about this, which is Giannis. Where does he get traded this offseason? Who trades for him? Does he ride it out with the Bucks and then hit free agency? And for some facts for people out there who don't know, and just to refresh us, there's the core four that were at the table at the trade deadline, which is the Miami Heat, the Golden State Warriors, the Minnesota Timberwolves, and the New York Knicks. There's a new report coming out that the Boston Celtics are very interested in Giannis this offseason, probably more so if they don't end up winning the NBA Finals. And then two more reports The Bucks refused to include Ryan Rollins for a trade for Ja Morant, which is why
Fair.
Grizzlies dipped out. And the Bucks denied a trade for Hero, Kael Ware, and multiple first-round picks and pick swaps at the trade deadline. So that's kind of a little summary of the situation. Tell me what you guys think now. What do we think we're going to see at the end of August?
I don't understand why they turned down that Heat trade, because that was when things were just starting to get horrific. That would have been one hell of a trade for the Bucks. To get in two good players, a load of first round picks, a load of picks in general, and just start rebuilding with Tyler Hero as kind of the core. I think he's a really good player. He was six man of the year only a couple of years back, and he's starting week in, week out now. I think the Celtics is the most likely, because he's not going to want to go to somewhere like the Grizzlies where he's not contending for a championship. He's not going to want to go to the Heat now, because even if they are in the play-in or the playoff, yeah, they're 10th seed at the moment. That's not the kind of place he wants to be either. He wants to be at the top of the table, winning 50, 55 games and pushing on and trying to win another championship. From my side, I just don't understand the Boston Celtics wanting him so badly. It's worked so well from this year. Tatum's back; it's working just as well. Are they really going to go and pair it all up to bring in this one guy who's 32 years old? Couple of injuries this year. Is that the kind of move you make if you're trying to push on and win championships? I'm not 100% sure, but I am open to hear your opinions on it. I could be completely wrong.
I agree with you. I don't think the Celtics go near him, despite the report. I think, bringing it back to the Brad Stevens quote, I know Giannis is an elite player and one of the best in the world, but his personality may not fit what they're looking for right now, especially if they keep Tatum and Brown. And I don't think they trade one of those two guys away, given the season that Brown has had and that Tatum is back. So I don't know what else the Bucks realistically accept for him. I do agree that they should have accepted that Heat trade. I don't know how much better you could have gotten for the future. And the Heat could have that problem then to deal with. I don't know what much else they would have had, some kind of a decent roster, but there would have been a lot of holes there. I know that the Bucks asked for VJ Edgecombe from Philly. They denied that. Thank God. So that was another report that was out there, and they asked for Evan Mobley if the Cavs came to the table. So yeah, it's I'm not sure. It's questionable, some of the deals they're trying to do. I don't know if they get much better than that Heat trade, but ultimately I think the Knicks make the most sense for me, because I just see the Knicks crashing out in the playoffs, where the issues we see in the regular season come to a head in the playoffs. They lose, they don't get to where they want to be, and they throw all the toys out of the pram and they go, look, we need to get Giannis in here because that's who we want and that's where he wants to go. And I don't know, they don't have much draft capital, but they're going to have to give up something in terms of solid players. So maybe it's Cat and whatever other firsts they have to offer down the line, and somebody else on the fringes. I don't know what they do exactly, but that's the most likely for me.
I think I'm completely on the opposite side of both of you, because I think there's no way Giannis gets to the Knicks. Like, I understand that they could flame out and try and throw the whole pram at the Bucks, but looking at their assets, like, I genuinely don't know how they would trade for Giannis. They don't even have their first round pick next year. They gave up a load of picks for Mikal Bridges, who doesn't look like that great of an asset that they could turn and flip him. So unless they're willing to part ways with an OG and an OB as well, maybe, because I don't think a Karl Anthony Towns is enough for just that and a pick for Giannis. I'm sorry, I'd rather just keep Giannis for the rest of his contract. I think the Boston Celtics realistically also doesn't happen, but the one interesting wrinkle is they did get off Isaiah Thomas early, and there's smoke around Jason Tatum not being happy that he's the second option this season, which is,
he's only played for the last month, man.
Yeah.
That's
Has to be nonsense.
I'm just saying, the only world I could see the Celtics happening is if Jason Tatum really
and Isaiah
is
Thomas is not, like, there's not comparable to Jason Tatum at all. Like Jason Tatum won them their first championship in so long. No matter how corny he is or how you think of him, like Isaiah Thomas was never at his level. That's not comparable, the two situations.
I'm just saying, guys. I'm just saying, we're one Jason Tatum crash out on Instagram away from him being traded for Giannis. Okay, like if they flame out in the second rounds against our beloved Sixers, it's happening.
And if I was the Bucks and the Celtics came to the table and offered me Tatum for Giannis, I'd be doing the Luca job and just not telling anyone and just signing on
Yeah.
because Giannis doesn't want to be there. Tatum is a star and someone that can change your whole culture. So I just think, yeah, if the Celtics were willing to do that, then give me that. But I don't think they would ever do that. And on the Knicks point, I think if you give up, even if they don't want Cat, which I don't blame them if they don't want him, if they went out and said, give me, like, Bridges has been terrible. If they went and said, give me Bridges and OG and your 2030 first, like, if the Knicks are desperate, they would do it.
I see that, but my most likely option is actually the Minnesota Timberwolves. I think there's a Nas Reed trade there. And depending on how their playoff looks, especially if they get bumped in the first or second round, I think Anthony Edwards is going to demand something to change.
They need to. They
And
need to give him
I
something.
think a trade package around Nas Reed and some picks, I think the Bucks would be looking into that and pairing him up with Ryan Rollins and the rest of the guys on that roster. I think for me, that's the most likely option. And I think Minnesota is good enough that Giannis would be interested in actually playing there.
I think the big thing for me, I don't disagree with you there, but the big thing for me is that this is going to drag on and on because the Bucks are going to have an idea in their head of what they want and what they think his value is. And there's nobody going to stump up anything close to it at the start of this offseason. It's going to come down to he might even be in Minnesota for the first 5 or 10 games of the season before not Minnesota, in Milwaukee, before they do get this trade done because the Bucks are going to try and play hardball. They're going to want as much as they can get for the star of their roster for the last 10 years plus. And there's no one going to offer it. Like, there's no one getting near to anything close to what that Heat trades would have given them. So this is going to drag on and drag on and drag on. And I'm already bored of it and it hasn't even started. So I can only imagine what it's going to be like when it is in full flow and everyone is coming out of the woodworks trying to get him. As long as the Rockets stay away from him, I'm sure you're the same with the Sixers. As long as they stay away from him as well, I'm just going to sit back and I'll wait for Michael to come on every 2 weeks and tell me the latest update on Giannis because I'm not going to be looking it up myself for the whole off season. I can't be bothered with this.
Well, it's going to be great podcast fodder for us. We have nothing else to talk about. So
Yeah, fair enough.
I think we'll leave it there for our segment with Michael this week. But yeah, as I said, he'll be here every single week, so you won't have to wait too much longer to get more from him. But thanks again, Mike, and we'll talk to you next week.
See you guys.
Okay, so Gan Seans, another week has gone by, and finally we had our first 5-pointer. You didn't realize, did you? Because I didn't say it to you. Was holding it until this episode. I went 3 for 3. Sixers to beat the Timberwolves, Nuggets to beat the Spurs, and the Hornets to beat the Timberwolves. 1, 2, 3, 5 points on the board. Shane, you got one. You also had the Nuggets to beat the Spurs, but you had Liverpool to beat City.
Yeah, that
You
one
got
well.
smacked. Grizzlies to beat the Bucks. Bucks won one of the only games I've ever seen them win in the last 3 months. So yeah, I'm 33-26 ahead. The lead is 7. You're going to need to pull it down out of the bag here down the stretch to catch me at this point. So we'll let you go first this week since you're so far behind me.
I was only like I normally write down the picks you have as well so I can check them and I didn't write them down last week, so the fact you got a 5-pointer is definitely my fault. It was just too late by the time I realized I wasn't writing them. I was like, oh, forget about it, it doesn't matter anyway, we're only going to get one each again. I've gotten 2 Premier League and 1 NBA this week. I've gone with the Hornets 43 and 37, I assume, because I wrote them down as 43 and 73, and that's more like a baseball record than it is an NFL one. But I've gone with them to beat the Pistons because the Pistons have the top seed wrapped up. The Hornets are still playing to try and get into the higher bracket of the play-in. They're just going to have more to play for than the Pistons have. They're both really good teams. I think the Pistons might even rest a couple, not for the whole game, but they might be taking them out early and putting them back in. So I just backed the Hornets to get over the line, and this one clearly hasn't done me well since like week 5 when I predicted the Pacers to win whatever game that was, and then everything is just falling apart since. It's like I sold my soul to the devil for that one Pacers win when they were brutal. But over in the Premier League, I've gone with Bournemouth to beat Newcastle. Bournemouth are 5-2, Newcastle are 17-20. Newcastle at home have been good recently.
Bournemouth against Arsenal, you mean, yeah?
Sorry, yes.
I was thinking.
Yeah. Yeah. So Arsenal, they're just brutal to watch. They were terrible again in midweek. We'll get on to them in a couple of minutes. This is a really, really exciting Bournemouth team. If they can get at that Arsenal backline, who are going to be maybe not a full eye, but a semi eye on the second leg of that quarter final as well, I just think it's there to be done for Bournemouth. So I just put them in. And I've also gone with Leeds to beat United. Um, you laugh every time I go against United, but I do have a basis for it this time. United have been terrible off the back of having a 2 week break. They've gone training in Ireland this week, so I can guarantee our people who are listening from outside of Ireland that it hasn't been a warm weather break for United in the training. I just think United are going to start slow. Leeds are going to start fast the way they did at Ellen Road. And if they can get a goal or two up in the first half an hour, very unlikely, I know, but if they can, they're also fighting for their lives as well. So I just think at 4-1, I just think it's a really, really good bet.
Fair enough. Yeah. I've gone one the same. I also have Bournemouth to beat Arsenal because I don't know. I just thought the way Arsenal played against Southampton and then again against Lisbon, it just signifies that they're not in a good spot at the moment. And they'll blame injuries even though they've only got like 4 players out. But I think Bournemouth are a really good value. 6-1 is a great bet here. And then I've also got the Hornets, but I have them to beat the Knicks. And the Knicks are 51-28. Hornets 43-37, as you said. The only reason I didn't go for the Pistons one is just because I think they might give Cade a decent amount of minutes to try ramp him up for the playoffs. But yeah, I think either way the Hornets are a good shout. So I'm going with them against the Knicks, and really to spoil the Knicks, I feel like it could go down to the last game to see who gets the 3 seed, the Cavs or the Knicks, and Hornets beating them on the last day of the regular season would be kind of funny. And then I'm going to what worked for me last week, and I'm going back to the Nuggets beating the Spurs. Nuggets 52-28, Spurs 61-19. I was going to go Nuggets over OKC, but I think OKC will treat that like a playoff game, whereas the Spurs may rest Wemby after his injury. So I think the Nuggets will have a good chance of that. Like they've already beaten them twice in the last couple of weeks and they've won 10 in a row. So I think I'm going with Nuggets here to beat the Spurs. So let's see how we get on with those. But you did mention that we'd come back to Arsenal, and we're going to touch on all the teams and all the games in the quarterfinals of the Champions League. We'll go through, start on Tuesday and get to Wednesday. We'll try and fire through these. So first up, we've got Madrid against Bayern Munich.
Thank
So
God you didn't start with Arsenal.
this was in Madrid, Real Madrid. That is playing against Bayern, and look, it was 2-1 to Bayern. That scoreline flatters Madrid, I think you'll agree. Bayern had so many chances. Madrid did have chances too. It was a great game to watch, but Madrid seemed to have a massive issue at fullback. They've got Trent on one side, Alvaro Carreras on the other side. They're both very attacking, and then you're completely isolated at that point. So I think coming up against Elise and Diaz was a recipe for disaster. And I don't know. I think Real are the type of team that can always turn it around, but I think they've got so many issues this season that I'm not sure if they can do it this time.
Yeah, I don't know how Vincent Company has turned this Bayern team into the best team in Europe, because last year he didn't seem to have any sort of tactical plan. Everything was just kind of gung ho, just go forward, score goals, see what you can do. And I know he won the Bundesliga, but they were terrible in the Champions League. Olise has come on leaps and bounds in the last 12 months. He is absolutely frightening now. Luis Diaz is kind of like, I've been apologizing to my friends all season because I said all year I wanted him gone. I'm probably said on this podcast I wanted him gone. I'd have him back now in a heartbeat 'cause he's looking like some player. And then Nabry and Kane are just a perfect foil for those two on top of it. They're just some front four. The thing that shocked me about this was when I was looking it up after, the stats are so even. And it didn't feel like a game where the stats were even. So they both had 20 shots. They've had four, Madrid had four big chances, Bayern three. The passes 454 to 493. I'm going to mention passes in all of these because when we get on to PSG, it's the most embarrassing thing I've ever seen in my life. And even the distance covered was really close and possession. So on paper, it's a really even game, but it's one of those again where the eye test tells a completely different story.
Yeah.
Bayern absolutely dominated them. Diaz, for just as much as I was praising, he kind of butchered two or three chances in the last 5 or 10 minutes to feed in Alicia or feed in Kane with overhit passes that were needlessly overhit or balls behind the players. This could very easily have been 4 or 5-1 to Bayern, and it would be completely tie over. But I do back Bayern to get through in the second leg here.
Yeah, they were both of our picks to win it out, so I'm going to stick with them to win this. But I think it makes for a great second leg that Mbappe did get that goal, and I think the thing as well is that the XG was a little bit different. It was like 3-2. It was like 2.99 to 1.98 or
Yeah,
something.
yeah.
So it shows that Bayern did have better chances when they did create them. So look, I think this is going to make up for a very, very interesting second leg, and everyone's going to be watching that as they were already, and not this next game, which I'm going to get onto, and that's Sporting Lisbon against Arsenal. Arsenal got the win. Kai Havertz coming up with a last minute goal as he's known to do. I think it was a poor game all around. I watched the highlights back afterwards because I was watching Madrid and Bayern. But Sporting hit the bar. They had a couple of good chances towards the end. I think one thing that's unforgivable is Gyökeres being offside for that Zubimendi goal. He's receiving a pass on the line and he's nearly on the edge of the box, and for some reason he's behind all the defenders, and he completely undoes a beautiful finish by Zubimendi for being offside there. I think it's likely to be a similar result in the second leg. Fairly pointless game to watch because it's going to be Arsenal just trying to stodgy it up, especially at home, as they're known to do, throwing themselves around a good bit this season. You know, it's not the Arsenal of old that we used to watch, which was great football. It's just I'm really kind of getting a bit fed up of watching them play because it's way too stodgy, and it's just not really any intent there most of the time. So I think Sporting will try their best, but I don't think they'll be able to break down Arsenal.
No, I'm not watching a single Arsenal game for the rest of the season. Like that, it's an absolute fact. I'm not even taking the piss. I have absolutely no interest in watching that football team or the way they play football. They can just like if they go on and win this and win the Premier League the way they're playing football, then football really is dead. And we said we had our whole topic last week or a couple of weeks back was is football crap. If Arsenal go and win either of these two competitions, then I think we can say for certain that our football is well and truly on the way out.
Yeah,
I don't
I
even want to
don't.
talk about them. I'd rather talk about Liverpool getting battered around the place than talk about this Arsenal team.
Yeah, I was just about to say I don't think there's anything else needs to be said about this game. So, like you said, let's move on to Wednesday. PSG 2, Liverpool nil. How this was 2-0, I will never know. Utter domination. PSG were so much better than what we saw in the group stage, and it was the same as last year, which is interesting. So let's see if they can repeat what they did. I can't wait to see them against Bayern if Bayern pull it off against Madrid and PSG hold out against Liverpool. I think that would be a really, really good semi final. But they're such a good team. They should have had one, if not two, penalties. I think that last push from Kanade is a stone wall penalty.
I, I think it probably is a penalty. I wouldn't say stone wall because
Or he's
it is
passed him
it's
and
the
he shoved him in his
slightest
lower back.
touch.
It doesn't
Like
matter. It's a clear penalty. I don't
I
know.
I think the only reason he doesn't give it is because of the one that he's had overturned on him, the referee.
Yeah,
I think
surely,
he's afraid to
100%.
give it. I think if he doesn't give that one for the great tackle by Kanate, then I do think he gives the second one, even though the first one didn't count. It's probably still in his
I think
mind.
also the first one is if it's in the Premier League, it's a penalty 100 times out of 100 because
Probably, yeah.
they don't really overturn things like that. Because he contacts his knee first, and even though it's minor, which in the Champions League they say, right, yeah, let's they have different referees and the
Mm,
different standard. They say, yeah, then he won the ball after, and it was a minor touch. But in the Premier League, they go, he touched him. That's it. Like he blew in his direction. He's so I think that's also worth noting as well. I think Liverpool are very lucky to get out at this with
yeah,
this result.
I think the only positive to take is that if Liverpool can go 1-0 up in Anfield, then the tie is still on. Do I see it happening? Probably not. 744 passes by PSG in 90 minutes. That's I remember when Man City had a game a couple of years back when they were doing their absolute peak best stats. They Gundogan and De Bruyne midfield, and Gundogan made like 97 passes and they made like 900. I've never seen a team this a Liverpool team that spent hundreds of millions in the summer, and Slot was like, I want to try and get to PSG's level of fullbacks flying all over the place, blah blah blah. It's not worked at all. 74% possessions. Their goalkeeper is useless. He was a backup keeper all season. He's useless. Liverpool didn't test him once with a shot. Not once. Not one shot on target. 0.18 XG to 2.2. Four big chances to none. 18 shots to three. Four saves from Ahmedashvili. And we were actually really lucky that he was able to stop some of them. Dembele hit the post. The Nuno Mendes one at the end of the game. There's just chance after chance after chance after chance. And this Liverpool team need to go into the second leg a completely different attitude, because they literally played like the way a Metz or a Lorient would go to the Parc des Princes, sit in and just try and play for nil all. You're 1-0 down after 11 minutes. Why you're not going to a back four, pushing ping pong up and going back to your 4-2-3 and trying to do something then, because that was the most pitiful Liverpool performance I've seen in a long, long time. And as you said, they're so lucky it's only 2-0 and that they're still in with a 10% chance of somehow getting through, but then they have to go and face Bayern and Madrid. So is there
Yeah.
even really a point at this stage?
Yeah, I don't think there's any chance that they get by PSG because they set up a five at the back to try and nullify them, and they gave up that many chances. If
Yeah,
Liverpool go at four at the back, they might get a goal or two, but PSG could score seven.
yeah.
Like, there's no way that Liverpool get out of here with anything. I just can't see it. They're just
Like,
the way they just play is just shocking. Like,
and
Slot is just
but
not a
even
good manager.
yeah, even if you try to go man to man and say, okay, Fiat for the first half an hour, I want you marking Hakimi. Then Hakimi pops up at centre forward and Kvaratskhelia is at right back, and you just pull it over the place. I've never seen a team play football the way this PSG team play football, where the only two people who stay in position are the centre backs, and everyone else is like, oh, Nuno Mendes wants to go up front. Desiree, hop in there at left back for the next 5 minutes and give him a chance. He wants to get a goal. They bring on another left back to go off Dembele and just put Nuno Mendes up on the left wing because they can. Like it's wild. It's one of those where I've been banging on for years, and I'm sure everyone else is, that formations are only for the TV. Formations don't exist. This PSG team are the literal epitome of the fact that formations don't exist, because outside of the two centre backs and maybe Vitinha in a small way are the only ones that kind of keep their position. Vitinha is some footballer.
Oh, unbelievable.
My goodness, he's the closest thing we've had to Xavi since Xavi retired. And the way he sits in, dictates everything. He's small, but he's so strong. Like, you look at himself and Joe Neves in a midfield, you're like, you can bully that. Szoboszlai was appalling. Well, all the midfield were appalling last night, but Szoboszlai was just running around like a headless chicken after a ball that he was never going to get to. The
Yeah.
one where Zaire Emery lets it run past him when Szoboszlai is sliding in is just like, oh, that's dreadful. They were just dreadful
There's one
start to
point
finish.
where Zaire Emery literally like outmuscles Kanata, and you're like,
Yeah,
how does
how?
this even happen?
Yeah.
Like, these guys are in such good shape. Yeah, I think that PSG are just a joy to watch, to be honest. And
Mm.
Van Dijk did not know what planet he was on. There was times there where I saw, and it was like you're set up at five, and he's over stuck to Konate's arse on the right hand side, and Joe Gomez is on his own on the left, and there's a massive gap. And a couple of times PSG tried to run through it, and just the pass was off. And like I just like this is just abysmal. Like, none of this is working. Just blow the whole thing up. Like, I just think that for how much money was spent, like, Slot just needs to go because someone else needs to come in and sort this out because it's a mess.
I couldn't believe they came out at the start of the second half in the five at the back again. I thought for sure he was going to go back to a 4-3-3, just put Frimpang up on the right wings. He was basically playing there anyway, and just get the three in midfield. He was playing Szoboszlai as a false nine, from what I can see. The man's never played in his life. I'm pretty sure Hugo Ekitike was playing on the left of the
It
front
looked
three,
like it.
Vert on the right. Like, the way he played it, Vert has never played right for Liverpool. That's where he was playing. Sabazai has never played false nine for Liverpool. That's where he was playing. Ekitike has never started off the left. That's who he was playing. the three there have played in the positions at different times. So put Vert on the left where he's played most of his time, Ekitike up front where he's played most of his time, Sabazai as the kind of almost as the wing back, and put Frimpong further up. None of what he did made sense yesterday, and it was just the final nail of a lot of nails that I put into this coffin in the last couple of weeks. But that was the one I was like, this is Liverpool Football Club we're talking about. Like, this is not a Metz or a Lorient, as I said. Monaco gave more of a goal when they go there. Lens give more of a goal when they go there. I couldn't believe he set up like a Burnley playing away at Man City, and it was embarrassing to watch from start to finish.
Yeah, let's move on to the last one. So, Barca against Atleti. It was 2-0 to Atleti away in the Camp Nou. I think the red card for Cabarsi, I thought it was kind of harsh, to be honest. I know that they are running through, but I don't feel like he has full control yet, or that he's running one-on-one for a guaranteed goal. I think a yellow card would have been fair enough, in my
Yeah,
opinion, there. But once you give Alvarez that free kick, he is just lethal.
it's
He
outrageous.
is such a good player. And then after that, it was a strange one. Atleti were the second best the whole game, even though Barca were down to 10 men. Sorlot's goal came out of nowhere. I think Barca can definitely turn this around because they showed already in the Copa del Rey. Atletico were 3-0 up after the first leg, and Barca came and beat them by 4. So I think they could just do that again. But Atleti are going to be very tough to break down in the next round. So yeah, I don't know. I think Barca are the most likely to turn the deficit around, even though they have one of the biggest deficits, or the joint biggest, with Liverpool. I actually think they're the most likely to turn it around.
Yeah, 6 of possession, 1.16 XG to 0.45, 18 shots to 5, 7 saves from Oblak for 1 from Barcelona. Like, it was complete dominance. It's one of those, like, how is the scoreline 2-0 after what I've just seen in the highlights? It made absolutely no sense. But yeah, I back Barcelona to turn this around. I don't think any of the other three on the losing side are going to turn it around. I'm obviously hopeful Liverpool do, and I'll watch it with complete hope and expectation that they somehow pull off a miracle. But I do think this Barcelona team are the only one that are going to turn this around.
Yeah, and did you see as well at the end where the Atletico, they clearly took the kick out. All Black clearly took it, and then the centre back was in position, and he picked the ball up with his hands and placed it again,
That's a
like
penalty
the
every single
Tyrone
time.
Mings
Yeah,
thing. Yeah, it's a penalty, and they didn't give it. They didn't even look at it. So I think Barca were kind of hard done by. And another note
yeah,
I have on this is Rashford looked really dangerous. So I hope he keeps it up. And they actually finally pay instead of keep trying to get a second
yeah.
loan.
I think that was Simeone's first win at the new camp as well. And he just sprinted down the tunnel after it was over. He was clearly still very unhappy as well with how it went. I don't blame him, but I'd say he still tore him to shreds in the dressing room despite the fact they won 2-0, because they're going to have to be 100 times better, the same way Liverpool and probably Madrid are going to have to be as well. So we'll see if any of the three of them can turn it around. Unfortunately, Arsenal are going to just ruin football their way to getting to a semi final. So we'll just have to wait and see.
Yeah, let's wait and see. Is right. So last up on the football side of things, how will Chelsea fare at home to Man City this Sunday? It's a Super Sunday matchup. An interesting one because it could be the FA Cup final if things go chalk in the semi final, where Chelsea have Leeds and City have Southampton. So it could be a bit of a preview to that. Both teams got on very well last weekend, obviously, but Chelsea played Port Vale, whereas City played Liverpool. So there's a massive difference in the level of team that they played. So I'd be much more confident if I was Pep. Enzo's still out with a suspension from the team, which I think would be a massive miss for
It's
Chelsea.
ridiculous.
Yeah, it's just such a Chelsea thing to do, to be honest. And I just think that they're in for a I don't know. I think they're in for a bad end to the season. I could see Leeds beating them in the cup, and I could honestly see this going badly for them in a number of other games. I just think that Rowe Senior doesn't have any control over this team, so I think City will be looking to grab a win here and then gear up for their game against Arsenal the following weekend to really make the title race something interesting.
Yeah, so 2 points I was going to make to start off my segment. You've said I will be backing Leeds in Gan Seans that week to beat Chelsea in the cup semi final. I really really fancy them. And it's the fact that City have this and then Arsenal. They're not going to want to give up the chance of getting back to within 6 points by losing this and the gap becoming 12 more than likely. Or no, it won't actually, because we both want Arsenal to lose.
Yeah.
So if City can get this, if Arsenal do lose, City are going to come out here and just steamroll Chelsea, get it back to 6 points, and look forward to getting to the Emirates then the week after and doing Arsenal. But we'll talk about that on next week's pod, obviously, because it
Mm.
is quite clear the game of the weekend. I don't see how it goes well for Chelsea, especially when they are suspending their captain, basically, because he made a comment that, like, why wasn't Kukurea suspended for saying that he thinks Enzo Maresca should still be in his job? Like, it's what he said is far worse than what Enzo said. Everyone wants to live in Madrid, as Jose Mourinho said. I want to live in Madrid. I'm not going to be
Yeah,
suspended for the
literally.
podcast for 2 weeks. Like, it's a bit ridiculous. Like, obviously, the Port Vale game, they'd have won that with me and you up front with how they played, so fair enough. But taking them out of the game against possibly still the best footballing side in the Premier League, because obviously it's
Mhm.
not Arsenal, I think that's absolute madness, and it is going to cost them in this 3-0 City.
Yeah, I'm basically right there with you. I've got 3-1. I just think that City didn't concede to Liverpool, and that's why I said, okay, they'll concede this week, because I think Chelsea will create probably a similar amount of chances that Liverpool did in that game. So
But
I
take
just see
them.
them maybe just taking one, just when the game is already maybe dead and buried, or it's 2-0 and makes it interesting for 10 minutes. But I just think that City are definitely going to win. I could even stretch this to 4-1. I just think
Yeah.
they've got it in the bag. And I will say, when we talked about Leeds, props to both of us, because we both predicted Leeds to draw at West Ham and win on penalties last week, which is pretty
Yeah.
mad. So, and Souček lost the penalty shootout, so good enough for him.
Yeah. Well, one more thing on Chelsea is, have you seen these Liam Delap stories coming out now that
I
he's
have,
crap? Now that he's crap again, he wants to play for Ireland.
yes,
Just,
he can
just,
shove it.
yeah, stay where you are, bud. Thanks very much. You had the opportunity to help us in a playoff, and you were like, no, I'm good enough for England. The opposite to what that other snake did from the club who shall not be named anymore. Let's move on to the power rankings.
Yeah, but I will say, well, before we move on, like if when Ferguson is actually fit and able to play, like Delap is our third choice striker behind
Yeah,
Ferguson and Parrott. So yeah, he should get used to sitting on the bench if he wants to play for Ireland. So yeah, let's move into the power rankings, as you said. So last week I had Thunder, Spurs, City, Nuggets, United, and Arsenal. So a couple of changes. Thunder are still first. They're up to 64 wins now. Just unbelievable. They made mincemeat of the Clippers last night. Shea was with another 20-point game. Chet was unbelievable. Then the Nuggets, I moved them up to second. I think they're on an absolute tear. 10 wins in a row. Jokic has been unbelievable. So in the last 10 games where they've won those 10 games, the amount of points, rebounds, and assists he's put up are more than any other player has ever put up over a 10-game stretch in NBA history. He's just he's charging for that MVP, and they're charging for this playoff spot. They're getting me back on board with them after I was ready to write them off. And beating the Spurs twice helps too.
Mm.
And then next up is City. They stay where they are. And then the Spurs just go into the Nuggets spot. I just swapped the two of them around. I think the Spurs are still unbelievable, but just the Nuggets have beaten them the last couple of weeks. Then United and Arsenal remain fifth and sixth. Arsenal are just in there. There's no one else to put in, to be honest, from the Premier League, because there's not been many teams played recently. So let's see how this weekend goes. But that's my six.
Yeah, so I have made one personnel change, but I have kind of switched up the running order a bit. So I have the Thunder number one, obviously, as well. I have brought the Nuggets in over the Lakers, quite obviously. I had until like maybe 2 hours ago, I had the Rockets slash the Nuggets in that position, because I was like, who am I going to throw in here? Rockets are on a 7 game run, but then I said to myself last night, if the Nuggets win again last night, which they did, it would have to be them, because it is on a 10 game streak. So they have come in at second for me. The Spurs dropped down to third. Sorry, they stayed third. They were third last year. I've just gone with the three NBA as the top three, because
Mm-hmm.
the Premier League game hasn't really happened. We're just off the back to the international break. So it is still the three. City are fourth, United fifth, and Arsenal sixth. Arsenal, again, like, you were only there because everyone else is crap. And they are top of the league, and they're in the quarterfinal Champions League. So yeah, I'll keep listed off again for you. So it's Thunder, Nuggets, Spurs, City, Arsenal. Sorry, City, United, Arsenal.
Yeah, we're fairly similar at this stage of things. Let's see if the Premier League can throw up an interesting team over the next few weeks to get in there. But yeah, that's another episode. Plenty covered off. Hope you enjoyed it. As I said, Michael will be back again next week and every week for the playoffs. So stay tuned for that. Plenty of NBA action as the regular season ends this weekend. But I'll throw it to you to wrap it, Shane.
Yeah, so it's been a long enough episode, so I won't keep you too long. Just again, like, subscribe, all the usual. If you wouldn't mind, that would be absolutely great. And we'll see you next week. Welcome back to another episode of Who's Got the Ball with Shane and James.